Maria Marlowe is a gut-brain-skin connection expert. She's also a celebrity nutritionist and she specialises in acne and the gut-skin connection. She's also an author, a very respected author, and I couldn't wait to speak to her about the topic of the gut-brain-skin connection because it affects everyone. Even if you don't think it does, if you don't have any visual skin issues, what's going on in your gut is affecting your skin. We had a really interesting chat. There's a lot to be said about what you eat and how it affects your entire body. And as we say, focusing on your skin. Why you should think about what you eat. What the basics are about the nutrition in your food. Whether to eat organic. Inflammation. Diet myths. Hormones. Even the key points about whether the skincare that we put on is actually affecting the skin as much as what we eat. It's so interesting. And again, I think everyone will take something from what Maria has to say. So, Maria, you are a gut, skin, brain expert, the connection between them. I think it's such an interesting topic about gut health and how it connects with your skin. The gut brain, don't they say that the gut is now, they're considering it your second brain? Is that an area that you've always been interested in, or did you have that moment where something happened and that's why you started studying that particular area of the body?
Yeah, definitely. It started with my own issues with acne. I had really bad acne for almost 5 years, despite trying all of the things from the drugstore medications to the prescription medications. And I would try one thing, it would work for a little while, and then it would come back, or it wouldn't work, it would make my skin worse. And I just, I got to a point where I literally thought that there was something wrong with me because I was doing all of the things I was supposed to do to clear acne, and my acne was not clearing up. So eventually I was introduced to this concept of food as medicine, which was wild for me at the time.
Yeah.
And I was so desperate. I was like, I will try anything. Just tell me what to do. I will change my diet. I don't care. And lo and behold, I changed my diet and my skin cleared up in about 3 months. And
Wow.
so that was for me, it was like a real light bulb moment. And to be honest, I almost I thought it was like a miracle. I thought there's no way that my food, my diet could have actually changed my skin. So I actually went back to eating, pizza and chips and cookies and soda and all the stuff that I was eating before. And then, of course, my skin broke out again. So the
Mhm.
second time, that's when I was like, okay, there's actually something here. And I started to really study and get interested in learning more. And eventually ended up changing career paths to go back to school to study nutrition and to study cooking, to really, get to understand just how nutrition and our gut health really affects our skin. And I said back, this is over 10 years ago. And I said, why isn't anyone teaching us this? Let me go and be the person to teach people about this.
And you've got a great way of teaching. If anyone hasn't seen your Instagram, you've got a great balance between the basics that we need to know, but you do it in a really fun way that it's not, you don't feel as if you're being taught, you just feel as if you're talking to a friend. You've also got humorous videos. The video for your book is brilliant because it's really funny, but it's also filled with information. So did you feel from the beginning that when you started to work with clients but also tackling social media, did you think, right, I have to do this in a way that doesn't feel as if you're at a college lecture?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think people learn better when you are just talking to a friend, or definitely through humor. Yeah, my book video, I really, spend a lot of time on that to make it pretty humorous. And I'd like to even like bring more of that in because I just feel that, especially with food, like it can be a very touchy subject for a lot of people. And you know, it, when you talk about changing your diet, like it's not something that's easy. If you're used to eating a certain way for decades, then all of a sudden to change that, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. So I wanted to make everything I do more approachable, and show people that it doesn't have to be hard, it doesn't have to be restrictive, it doesn't have to be like not fun. I wanted to make it fun and enjoyable, and of course all the food tasty, to make people interested in actually making those changes.
And what I think is really good about what you cover is you make sure that we understand things about like organic. That's such a hot topic because they always say where possible, go organic. But you're one of the few people who is a nutritional expert that I've seen actually mention about the realities of how much it costs and the differences. Like what, for instance, grass-fed beef. You see a lot of people that will say, go organic, eat everything organic, but they don't actually explain things. And it might be different in different parts of the world. But over here, sometimes something says it's organic, but then you realize that it's only parts of it that are organic, and it might not actually be the best choice for you. And I noticed that you're trying to make it as clear as possible. This is what you are looking for when you're buying this, and this is what you don't need to get hung up on. And I thought that was quite a fresh approach.
Yeah, because again, I think people sometimes have a lot of roadblocks to eating healthier, and I want to try to clear those roadblocks as much as possible and just show people that it doesn't necessarily need to be hard or confusing or even necessarily expensive. Like, I love sharing tips on how to save money. Like, one simple thing with organic produce, for example, buying frozen produce is just as nutritious, if not more so than fresh oftentimes, but it's typically about 30% cheaper than the fresh stuff. So there's just so many ways. And same things with like frozen meats or seafood. You can get a higher quality if you're getting it frozen versus fresh sometimes. And with seafood, for example, even the fresh seafood that you see, unless it's locally caught, I mean, it's often frozen anyway, and they just thaw it at the grocery store and then, sell it to you. So there's a lot of ways that you can save on healthier things, and I think it's important because, of course, you don't want to go broke doing it. But I do really think that our health is something definitely worth investing for, because it's not, what we eat doesn't only affect our weight or our skin, but it affects our mood, it affects our immunity, it affects our energy levels, and really everything in between. So when we feel our best and look our best, we're going to live our best life. So I
Yeah.
think it is really important that we, you know, make good choices around what we're consuming.
That is so true. And when you talk about the gut, I noticed that you mentioned that it's inflammation that we really need to pay attention to. And I am so on board with that because a lot of people have got some sort of, whether it be an autoimmune or they might be getting over something as recently as when COVID was, touch wood, it doesn't happen again, but when so many people were recovering from that and they had body inflammation, do you feel that with the stomach, it's only really now that we're beginning to understand that it must be that gut inflammation that's causing not all of the issues in the skin, but quite a significant amount?
Well, there's quite a bit of research now linking gut health and gut inflammation to inflammatory skin disorders such as acne, such as psoriasis, such as rosacea. And what the studies show is that people who have inflammatory skin disorders tend to have a disrupted gut microbiome. So they tend to lack the good bacteria, like the good lactobacillus and bifidobacteria, which provide those anti inflammatory benefits. And they tend to have more of those opportunistic bacteria that may promote inflammation. So that's one big issue. Another big issue typically with these disorders is that people with them tend to lack diversity of gut bugs in their gut, which we want a wide variety of different species to really make sure that we're covering all our bases. And then another commonality typically amongst these disorders is something called leaky gut or increased intestinal permeability, and that's really where that inflammation is stemming from, and that's how inflammation can start in the gut and kind of leak out to the rest of the body and become systemic or chronic and kind of body wide, and eventually show up on our skin as inflammatory red bumps and blemishes.
Does it frustrate you as an expert that we're geared, especially on social media and in the media, towards treating the skin from the outside so much more? And there are, again, skincare is amazing. Who doesn't love when they find a product that really works for them? But does it frustrate you as an expert that we maybe spend too much focus on what we're putting on it rather than what's going on inside?
Absolutely. Yes. And I always say skin has two sides. It has the inside and the outside. So, yes, we still need to use skincare. We still need to wash our face and and put things on our face, which is totally fine. But there's definitely we're emphasizing just the outside when the reality is what you do internally is going to have a much more significant impact on your skin than what you put on topically. And again, this goes especially if you are dealing with some sort of chronic inflammatory skin disorder like the acne, like the psoriasis, like the rosacea, etc. And that's because the inflammation, what the research shows is that the inflammation is really starting from inside. And so, we can calm the inflammation from the outside, but if we keep lighting the fire from the inside, it's going to just keep coming. And so, if to really shut off that cycle, we need to douse the fire from the inside. So, definitely our diet, thinking about our gut health, improving our gut health, even managing our stress.
Okay.
Stress is a source of inflammation. And it's quite interesting. So, this whole idea of the gut brain skin connection, it is sort of more popular now. And I feel like talked a bit about more now, but it actually, the roots of it are almost 100 years ago. There were two dermatologists that basically set the foundation for what we now call the gut brain skin connection. And what they hypothesized was that stressful thoughts, which originate obviously in our brain, can actually disrupt the gut, and that disruption in the gut would create inflammation that would show up on the skin. And so in the decades since, study after study has really kind of validated many of their theories. And we do know now that stress can absolutely break you out. We know that stress can disrupt your gut, and that's why it causes the breakout. And so, yeah, it's really, really important that we're focusing on nourishing the inside just as much, if not more so. I would actually say more so than what we put on the outside.
They were so ahead of their time. Even when you think about how accurate that is, if you're worried about something, just when it pops into your head and you remind yourself that you're worried, you can feel your stomach flip. It's so true.
Yeah, it's amazing. Everything's interconnected. And so that's why even, when people come to me for acne and we work on their diet and improving their diet and improving their gut health with probiotics and reducing their stress, they're amazed that some of their other issues also clear up, right? Whether it's, a lack of energy, or they notice their immune system is stronger, they get sick less often, their moods are better, their periods are better, like everything's better, because the reality is our whole body is connected. And then, when something is off or we're not eating the healthiest diet, which is creating an issue, usually it's creating other issues too. And so when we can really fuel our body with the healthiest foods, it's going to help every part of our body.
Makes so much sense. And since I've got an expert here, I was pondering at the weekend when I was reading all of your information, and I thought you might have an idea about, with they call them old wives' tales, but normally there's a grain of truth in them where your gran or your mum might have said, don't do this or do that. And through the years, people would say, oh, it's just an old wives' tale. But we all grew up being told, don't eat sugar, it gives you spots. Don't eat greasy foods or oily foods because it'll make your skin oily. Then everybody laughed at that and said, oh, that's complete nonsense. Do you think the grain of truth was that the sugar that's in the chocolate would inflame your skin, and maybe the oils might not have been healthy oils? So again, they might have inflamed your skin. Do you think there might actually have been a grain of truth in what your gran and your mum might have said to you?
Absolutely. And I think, something that we all eventually learn is that usually our gram and our moms were right, right? Even if we don't want them to be,
Yeah.
they often are. And so, let's talk about the sugar first. So now, today, um, there are tons of studies that have shown that a high glycemic load diet, one that is full of refined sugars and refined carbohydrates, which spike our blood sugar and our insulin, these are in fact associated with an increased risk of acne. And typically, the more sugar and refined carbohydrates you eat, the worse the acne is going to be. And so, like for example, in the U.S., even the American Dermatology Association, acknowledges sugar and like a refined carbohydrate diet or high glycemic load diet as a possible trigger of acne. And so that one is pretty well established. But I will say, prior to, I would say, the 1950s and maybe even before that, it was very commonly acknowledged that sugary foods were not great for our skin. But interestingly, because chocolate was one of the foods that was really singled out, there were a couple of studies on chocolate that were done, and they were funded by none other than like the Chocolate Candy Makers Association of America or whatever it was, something like that. And they found that there was no connection between chocolate and acne. But if you actually read the study, it was very flawed. It was, very biased, and it does not suggest that chocolate, doesn't. These were very, very sugary candy bars that they were looking at, and they were basically comparing like a chocolate bar with a lot of sugar versus something else with a lot of sugar. And so the sugar was still there, and they're saying, oh no, chocolate doesn't. So anyway, kind of in retrospect, we now know that sugar, in fact, is problematic. It's not necessarily the chocolate, like the cocoa. The cocoa is not necessarily the problem. It's all the stuff that's added to the candy bar that's problematic. And then in terms of the oil, yes, vegetable oils, these refined oils are very high in omega-6 fatty acids, which promote inflammation in the body. So yes, the grandmas and the moms were right on both fronts.
So experts like yourself, we now feel as if we are enthusiastic amateurs because you pick up so much information and it all makes sense. And another thing that made sense to me, just again, reading a lot of your information, especially the videos on Instagram, I found them so useful. I think a lot of us who grew up sort of, I'd say probably from the 60s onwards, through no fault of our own, we were part of that switch where it became aim for low fat. But what we didn't realize was these low fat products that we were buying were high sugar, and we didn't know. We honestly thought we were doing the right thing. So you were following again your aunts and your mum and any friend's house that you went to, there'd always be what you thought were healthy choices because everyone thought that they were doing the right thing, low fat, but then as we found out, high sugar. So do you feel that's something that you are still sort of undoing? And a lot of us will come to you with a skin condition and you'll be unpicking all the information that we genuinely, through no fault of our own, thought was right.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, people are still scared of fats. I see it all of the time. And you're exactly right. So when they take a fat out of a food that naturally has it, it's probably not going to taste good. And that's why they typically add a lot of sugar or salt back into the product in order to make it more palatable. And so you're better off just having the fat because we actually need healthy fats, like good whole fats. They're very beneficial for our hormones, especially as women. So it's really important that we're getting enough fat. And yeah, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there are a lot of sort of theories or ideas that kind of die hard. And unless you're really researching or looking into it, you wouldn't know, right? And so definitely there are a lot of things that sometimes I have to kind of repack and help people rewire and understand that, whole foods are always going to be the better option than anything that's a bit more processed. Even if it has all of these sort of health claims or health labels on it, the less processed the food, the better. The more processed the food, typically, the less healthy it actually is.
And do you find that there's a difference if you travel, what each country, their supermarkets or their grocery stores, what they have as their healthy foods versus how bad their processed foods are? Do you love to have a little look and just see who's possibly got like the most processed of processed? Because sometimes I look over here in the UK and I think that's pretty shocking, some of the stuff that we sell. But then when I have been to the US, I've been to maybe like the biscuits or the sweets, and I've thought, wow, they've got even more additives than we do. So do you find that there is a difference from country to country?
Oh, absolutely. And one of my favorite things to do is actually to go wherever I travel, to go to the grocery store or go to the market and just see what people are eating, see what's available. And I will say America for sure is the worst. As an American, I'm actually currently in London at the time. And it was funny, I was in Sainsbury's the other day and a little boy kind of like walked up and there was like the candy on the shelf and he picked up this American candy and I think he was with his grandmother, and his grandmother's like, no, 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 no American candy. There's too much processed garbage in that. It'll give you cancer. She's like, no, you can't have that. And it was just so funny. And he put it back on the shelf. But yeah, I would say America is definitely the most processed. Europe and the UK, there's more regulations in terms of what you're allowed to put in food, and they're a bit stricter, not even just on processed foods, but even on things like organics and the meat production and animal product production. You have more stringent standards here and higher standards here than the US. So you're definitely a level above and a little bit better off than what we have in the US.
Well, that's good to know. But I must admit, though, there are some products where you actually look at it and think, in what world is that a food? But you even look at it and it's UK made, and you think, I don't know what that started off as, but I don't know what it is now.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy just how processed our foods have become and how removed we are from. I was talking with my husband about this the other day. How we're so removed. Even 100 years ago, people had gardens, people had chickens. People were so much more in touch with their food and where it came from. And now everything. We all live in cities, and everything comes out of a package and we don't even know how things grow or how they're raised or any of this stuff anymore, and it's really a shame. And I think the more again that we can just kind of get back to nature and back to what comes out of the earth, that's going to be the best for us, as long as we kind of shop the perimeter of the store where we still have those whole foods. And not to say that you could never have packaged foods. I have packaged foods once in a while, but you want to just keep it the minority. 80 to 90% of what you're eating, healthy whole foods. That other 10 to 20%, enjoy yourself within reason.
Totally agree. Because sometimes you walk past something and you think, that looks like I need to have that.
Yeah,
I
and
don't,
the
sorry,
the
go.
good thing the good thing about now is that no matter what you want, whether it's like a candy bar or chips or whatever it is, there's always a healthier version, that is made with cleaner ingredients and healthier ingredients and better oils and all of that. So you can, like, when you do have those cravings, you can just try and find those brands that, don't have added sugar or, have cleaner, more whole ingredients versus all those like very refined ingredients. So I always talk about upgrading. So whatever your favorite foods are, just try to upgrade them.
I like that upgrading. I'd also love to know, when a client comes to you, if they have a specific diet, maybe they're vegan, vegetarian. Sometimes I know the word fussy. Fussy is not helpful as a word, but sometimes we do have a lot of things that we like and a lot of things that we don't like. Um, can you still always get someone to where they need to be with their skin?
Well, I'm a huge proponent of listening to your body and like teaching people how to be what I call a body detective and to understand that you're not going to just break out or have whatever ailment it is for no reason. Your body is trying to communicate with you something. And so we need to kind of be that detective and try to understand what's going on. So there are certain diets, like for example, a vegan diet, which you could be healthy on, but you could be deficient in various nutrients on as well. And it's easier to be deficient in certain nutrients because they're not found widely in plant-based foods. Like for example, omega-3 is a really big one and a common one. And so just I take a lot of time to kind of like educate people and like help them understand, even doing testing. If you do a nutrient panel and you see for yourself, oh, wow, I'm completely deficient in this, and this, it
Yeah.
helps things click a little bit more. So, I think you could have different, there's no one size fits all for a diet, but definitely I think it is important to have a variety of foods in your diet. And I think it is important to, um, look for nutrient deficiencies, because when you are on a more restricted diet, and this is any diet, not just a vegan diet, like any diet you're on, keto, this, that, the other thing, carnivore, like you can become deficient on things. So you want to make sure that you're testing and looking out for that.
I think that's so useful because in today's world, you don't want to say anything about food in case you accidentally trigger something in someone. So I think that's really helpful that you're saying that it doesn't matter what you eat, even if you think, I know the word clean eating, but even if you think you're like eating perfectly for your requirements, I think it's useful to know that no one will have it 100% perfect because like you say, we're all different. I think that helps me because sometimes you do look at Instagram accounts that inspire you and you think, well, I hope to be like them one day. I hope to get to that level. So that helps me to know that maybe there isn't such a level as this person's got it absolutely perfect. They'll still have to check for deficiencies.
Exactly. And that's the thing. We each have our own unique biochemistry and our own needs. So, like, the perfect diet for you is not necessarily the perfect diet for me or for the next person. And so, I think it is really important that we are always just listening to our body. So, you may think that you have the best diet in the world, but if you don't feel well, if you don't have energy, if your hair is falling out, if your nails are breaking, if your skin's breaking out, if you have period cramps, if you have headaches, like all of these are signs that this may not actually be the best diet for you. And it's a good idea to kind of get out of our heads sometimes and just more into our body to really understand what is actually the best for our body.
Oh, Maria, that's a perfect place to end it because I think you've inspired me because you've made me realize that it's all about getting to the best place for you because I think sometimes you do look at others, be it celebrities, be it influencers, and you think, I wonder if I can achieve that. But I think as long as you're getting the best for yourself, I think that's a lovely positive thought. So could you tell us your book's full name? Because again, it's got a fantastic video that goes along with it. But what's the book in case anyone would like to get it?
Yeah, the book is called The Real Food Grocery Guide, and it's essentially a guidebook to choosing the healthiest foods in every aisle of the grocery store. And it's available on Amazon.
And where can people find you online?
So on social media, on Instagram, I'm at Maria Marlowe, and Marlowe is spelled Marlowe. You can also, my website is mariamarlowe.com. I have tons of information and recipes there. And on TikTok, I am at Glow by Marlowe.
Perfect. Oh, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you. And again, I love it when I have a conversation and it just makes me feel inspired. And you've done that today. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.